that's why Carolina's in Chapel Hill and USC's in California. And the university in this state always has been, always will be, Clemson. Print that, tweet that.
And I hope they come in undefeated. That's what I told you before the game. Our team believes. Our team believes. They got heart. We got greatness in us. They say we can't do it. What they say now?
Down go the Cats. Auburn's 17-game win streak comes to an end.
We got greatness in us. So I told them, you got greatness in you, but you got to make a decision to be great. They made a decision to be great today. And I couldn't think of a better place to end the streak than Death Valley, South Carolina, baby.
And now it's time for TigerNet Talk, presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty.
They got the coaches back, and they have each other's back.
Welcome back into another edition of TigerNet Talk. I'm your host, Lawton Swan. Thank you for stopping by to spend about an hour or so with us talking about the Clemson Tigers. Of course, on this episode, especially if you're logging into the program from the front page of TigerNet.com, you see Will Proctor, former Clemson quarterback, will be joining us in just a little bit. Second segment of the show, as always, is when we like to have our guests on board. I'm noticing a bit of a lag for those of you right now who are in the chat room. I don't know if the audio is lagging at all. I certainly hope not. It's always crystal clear, though, on the podcast edition, but I am noticing some video issues. So if you're having trouble in the chat room, please put it in there. Come on in. If you're not in already on Spreecast, just log in. If you've got Facebook, if you've got Twitter, I'm pretty sure you can even sign up for a Spreecast account if you need to, because you don't want to be on social media. And come on in with us. Spend some time in the chat room. We got a great group of guys. I see Craig, Norman, Doug, and RCSportscards.com already in there, and a bunch of other guests. Good. It looks like we may sound okay. So that's a positive. I was a little bit concerned. Every time you get a little hitch in your giddy up, you get a little bit concerned doing this. But first off, I want to tell you how you can participate with us here on the program. If you've got thoughts or questions for Will Proctor, feel free to contact us with hashtag TNTalk. That's the letters T and then N and then talk. All one word. If you know about hashtags, very simply, it'll direct it right to us. I've got the Twitter feed pulled up, waiting for any questions to come in. You can also ask the questions in the chat room if you'd like to. Craig's already saying, what's up, Swanee? Not much, Craig. Great to have you with us, and everybody else for spending some time with us here. Also, you can email us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You're sitting around, you're thinking about a topic you want to talk about, somebody you want to have come on the show. Email us. Clemson81@gmail.com. We'll do everything we can to land some of the Clemson Tiger greats. We're in the mix of trying to land one person, though, that's going to surprise you all, and I'm going to keep it a little tight to the vest because he's a little bit difficult to get a hold of. But when we land this guy, you will not believe it. Now I'm going to go out and get him. Let's just say he's a part of a family that has played at Clemson. I won't say what sport. You can think about it. You can chew on it for a little while. Let's just say that he's been a part of a family that's participated in sports at Clemson University. Thank you for coming in. I tell you what, it was an odd week, wasn't it? You know, this is what happens when we get out of football season and you don't have that weekly grind of games every Saturday. You've got basketball continuing on, and you have your midweek games from time to time, but oddly enough, this week you didn't. And that left a little void for everybody. Clemson Tiger baseball still not playing midweek games. So really, you could have expected it to be a very quiet and calm week. But it didn't turn out that way, as, of course, Daquan Bowers arrested in New York City for having a handgun in a carry-on bag. Now, when the news first broke, and as you know if you follow the program, you know we've had Daquan on the show recently, and I sent a message to him and let him know we were thinking about him, and certainly whenever, you know, with the legal proceedings, he's not going to be able to talk a whole lot about it, but once things are cleared, hopefully he'll be able to come on here and maybe give us a little bit more of his side of the story. But when the news first broke about it, I think we all imagined and we all have this terrible image. And I know for some of you, you're saying, you know what, Swanee, that was a few days ago. We don't need to rehash it. But I think it's fair to realize that when you initially hear things like this, you say, how does this happen? What is this guy thinking? People are calling and texting and saying, Swanee, why does Daquan Bowers feel the need to have a gun? Why does Daquan Bowers feel that need? He's a huge guy. Who's going to mess with him? And then whether or not some of the speculation that's come out and the stories have come out have been exactly true, at least you find out that it wasn't a situation where he's getting ready to board. And I want to say something to Jim Rome. And I've been a big fan of Jim Rome's for a long time. And many of you may still like Jim Rome. And I think he does a very good job at what he does. I really enjoy his program, especially when I listened to it back in my days in college. Many times working up to a big rant that I wanted to put on his show. I always wanted to call in and see if I would get, I forget what he called it. You either get ran or you get racked. I just wanted Jim Rome to rack one of my takes one day on his program. But I heard one of his little CBS minutes that he puts out now, and it was in between some programming on the radio. And basically he went with the theory of what was such, that Daquan Bowers was trying to get on a plane with this weapon, and that what were you going to do? Put your gun where everybody else puts their bottles of water and their hand lotion. And I really thought it was an unfair shot at Daquan Bowers, because that wasn't the case. Daquan was trying to declare this weapon that apparently, from what I understand, he found, and now this is not according to Daquan at all, this is what I've heard about the situation, that he found on his way in New York. It was registered to him. He wanted to get on the plane. He wanted to do things the right way. I was reminded of a story I read about a school system that had a zero-tolerance policy for weapons. And a young kindergarten girl brought in a plastic water gun to class. And the school board expelled her from the school district. Now, just for a minute here, rewind. This is a kindergarten student who probably has no concept of the policy. Should her parents maybe have known? Yes, but it was show and tell day. She pulled it out. It wasn't like she was pretending to gun people down. It wasn't like Daquan Bowers walked in to the airport like the Joker in Batman, waving this gun aimlessly around and saying, I have a weapon here. He was trying to declare this so that he could get it home. He wanted to figure out the right thing to do. And New York has some of the most stringent policies. And look, if you are a gun owner, and this debate is in the media every day now with gun control laws, the Second Amendment, and this really, to me, doesn't matter what side of that equation you fall on. If you are a gun owner, though, and Daquan Bowers needs to know this as well, you have to be responsible for knowing the laws everywhere you go. If it was a mistake that Daquan even had this with him, he still, at that time, when he realized he had a gun in New York, should have immediately contacted his agent and said, hey, this is the situation. I need to know what to do to rectify it. I need to know what I can do to get out of New York without causing a stir. And that's the one part of this, in my opinion, that's on Daquan. Because if you arrive at the airport with the knowledge that you're going to turn this over to the TSA, to the lady at the counter, and say, hey, this is what I have in my bag. This is what's going on. I'm trying to get back home. I don't know what to do. I completely understand that thought process. It makes perfect sense to me. I think many of us, given the situation, would have done the exact same thing, and no one would have thought anything less of you for it. There were people on message boards saying, hey, this happened to me, and it took a long time to get through the process. My best hope for Daquan Bowers is right now that there has been some precedent carried out by other people who have gone through the same situation, who have been in a similar situation in New York, perhaps. And even though it's wrong place, wrong item to have with you, if Daquan Bowers was truly trying to do the right thing to safely get this weapon back to the state of South Carolina, then I have no qualms with what happened. But I think that we have to realize that this wasn't as he's getting on. This didn't go through the scanner. He wasn't trying to sneak a weapon on. And I really look forward to the day that we do get to hear from him on this, because I think that that will really set the record straight. But obviously, he's not going to be able to say anything about it. But a disappointing day for Clemson Tiger fans. And for those of you that still say, well, why would he have this weapon? We all know that it's not safe out there for athletes in a lot of degrees. Do they at times, and do celebrities put themselves as well in situations that aren't healthy? Yes, by attending nightclubs maybe that are packed with people who may be out to make an easy dollar, perhaps, by robbing and stealing from people that they know are well off. Yes, that is a fear that these guys have to live with. But if the scenario was that Daquan really didn't know that he had brought the gun with him, that it was in his bag, the only fault I have of him there is, listen, you are a gun owner. You need to know the laws, and you need to know where your guns are at all times. Because I can't imagine owning a gun and somebody saying, hey, Swanee, where do you keep your gun? Well, Charles, funny you mentioned it. I can't remember where I put it. And if I had put it in a suitcase, which seems like a horrible place to keep a gun for circumstances such as these, I think I would find a better spot. I truly think I would find a better spot. RC Sports Car says, why do you have a gun? Because the Constitution says, let's put this on the screen for everybody, because the Constitution says he has the right to keep and bear arms. Yes, there is the Constitution of it all. But I think there are people out there that say, you know what, when you're a high-profile guy, when you're in this situation like he is, there's the side that says we understand the feeling or the need to carry a gun, because if everybody felt the need to carry a gun, everywhere you went, there would be guns galore. So everybody doesn't feel that need. I think what people were more or less getting to is, why does he feel that need? And I think it has to do with, one, if he took it on purpose, the threat because of the money that everybody knows he's got. Now, maybe most people wouldn't even recognize him. At least he plays in the sport where 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be recognized in the public if you play the defensive end position, unless you're just an absolute standout at the NFL level. But it still doesn't excuse it if it was an accident. Obviously, things went the wrong way for Daquan in the end, but at least it appears he was trying to do the right thing. And unlike Plaxico Burress, or as I like to call him, Plaxidental shooting, at least Daquan Bowers didn't shoot himself. I mean, there's one bright side out of this, and he didn't shoot anybody else on accident. So perhaps things will turn out well for Daquan Bowers. Of course, Daquan with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't know what ramifications will come down from the Buccaneers organization. It's certainly an embarrassment, though, for Daquan if he didn't know that it was in there. But as soon as we get a chance to get him on, we definitely will. We'll do everything we can, but it could be a long time depending on the proceedings. But stick around, because you are going to want to stay with us here, as we have Will Proctor, former Clemson Tiger quarterback, coming up with us on the program right after these messages. If you don't know about the Harlem Shake, it's a little crazy. Do a little Google or a YouTube search. Find Clemson students doing it on campus this past week. I think you might see Sammy Watkins in the video. We'll be right back. Miss that old familiar ping of college baseball? Well, guess what? You don't have to miss a single game of Clemson Tiger baseball, as you can stay at the closest hotel to Doug Kingsmore Stadium, the Clemson University Conference Center and Inn. Rooms are available for baseball season with lakeside accommodations, complimentary continental breakfast, bar, Seasons Restaurant by the Lake, Joe's Place Bar, and the Walker Golf Course. All are waiting for you right around the corner from the stadium. For reservations, contact General Manager Sharon Franks at Sharon sharonf@clemson.edu or call toll-free 1-888-654-9020 and ask to speak to Sharon. It's the Clemson University Conference Center in. Go to www.clemsonuniversityn.com. G-Dog General Dentistry at Oak Grove is located on Highway 1 near the Barnyard Flea Market. Modern, relaxing dentistry with TVs and headphones in every room, nitrous and even oral sedation. Digital diagnostic x-rays for better quality and 85% less radiation exposure. And check out their new Clemson Patient Special. Mention that you heard about G-Dog here on the Clemson Sports Talk programs and receive an extra 5% off all services through football season. If you don't have a regular dentist, go see my dentist, Dr. Rick Jackson at G-Dog. That's General Dentistry at Oak Grove. A winning team requires having great team members. If you're a landowner interested in selling timber or are considering buying or selling land, call the winning team of Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC today. Put the knowledge and skills of professional licensed foresters and realtors to work for your team. To learn more about services offered by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC, visit www.crosscreektimber.com and easily follow the link to real estate or reach them by phone 864-517-3620 or 864-517-3621. Clemson Sports Talk fans, let us help you. With rates starting as low as $100 a month, you can advertise with us through July 2013. We are currently seeking additional advertisers and would love to help you spread the word about your business. Email us clemson81@gmail.com for additional information. Sponsors will receive an ad during the show and a link and logo in the weekly show notes on TigerNet and on the front page of ClemsonSportsTalk.com. Take your business to the Clemson fans around the world with us, ClemsonSportsTalk.com.
Thought I'd grow up and I'd settle down. There was 10,000 girls up in Tiger Town, and it was heaven to me.
Welcome back into TigerNet Talk. I'm your host, Lawton Swan. Glad to have you with us here once again. Wednesday nights, 9 o'clock, we kick it off. Wednesdays and Sundays. Some people like to tell me when the Baptists are going to church, we're talking about Clemson sports. If that's the way it helps you remember it, please do. Come on by, stop in at 9 o'clock Sunday night, 9 o'clock Wednesday nights. And we've really tried to put together a great number of former Clemson players here during the downtime. During football season, we can't hardly get enough time to talk about Clemson Tiger sports. Here during this time, when we're, like we said, we're kind of in between basketball and baseball season, we're always feeling and trying to get some former players on board with us. And we've got former Clemson quarterback Will Proctor with us. Will, welcome into the program. Thanks for being here, and I know Clemson Tiger fans can't wait to hear from you.
I appreciate you guys having me. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Will, I know Clemson fans remember you from your playing days. Obviously, when you're a quarterback, it's funny. Cody Webb sang there in that song 4 Years into 5, talking about his years at Clemson. There were 10,000 girls up at Tiger Town. It can't hurt being the quarterback on campus, can it?
We had a good time, but there are a few places better than Clemson when it comes to student body and everybody having a good time, especially obviously the interest in our football team was always at a fever pitch, so it was a fun time to be a part of it. Well,
you were always, one of those good-looking guys on campus, obviously, and I think about Tribble Reese and what he did with that Sweet Home Alabama show or whatever he was on. And then, I kind of wondered about you. I saw that you were in New York. Is this some kind of – are you thinking about maybe doing something like that, or where are your interests lying now?
I have zero interest in doing anything like that. I'm working on Wall Street. I'm in an investment management firm here in the city. I also do some broadcasting on the side. I did some arena games last year. I've done some work with Fox and ESPN as well. So, but no, I have no grand aspirations of being on any sort of reality television show.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, we appreciate you being here, Will. And I want to start really looking at it seriously with the 2006 season, your first year as the quarterback for the Clemson Tigers, stepping in after Charlie Whitehurst and the expectations surrounding that program. You guys start 7-1, and really, I guess when you look back at it now, the loss at Boston College, we talked with C.J. Spiller about that game. most recently, and 34-33, a double overtime loss. What do you remember about that ball game and leaving the second game of the season with a loss in a game that it might have gone the other way with just a couple of breaks?
Yeah, obviously, we started our conference schedule on the road against a pretty stout Boston College team led by Atlanta Falcons quarterback Matt Ryan, and to start your conference schedule on the road obviously can be not tough, but obviously it can be a challenge. And we really felt good about our ball club. We had a great summer. We had a kind of a tune-up game against Florida Atlantic to start the year, and really felt great. So going up there, we went there with a lot of confidence. But as you mentioned, a double overtime loss where we really felt like we had done a lot and put ourselves in a position to win that game. And when we didn't win it, obviously that put us a little bit behind the eight ball as far as our goals for the year in terms of the ACC and our division and things like that. But we'd still done a lot of good things. We had C.J. Spiller came into the world that night, or that day, that afternoon. He became C.J. Spiller that day with some dynamite plays, and we realized we had added a new weapon. And so, some good came out of that loss. Obviously, you want to win every game, but we knew obviously that we had another tough one on the road in Tallahassee just 7 days later that we had to really start preparing for.
Yeah, well, speaking of that game, you go down to Tallahassee and you get a big win for Clemson Tiger faithful. The first time to get a victory in Tallahassee since 1989. Doak Campbell Stadium, typically those fans don't walk out of there with a loss. What did it feel like holding your head high coming out of there and heading back to Tiger Town with a big victory?
I grew up a Florida State fan, so, for me, and I grew up in Central Florida in Winter Park right outside Orlando, and grew up going to games in Doak Campbell Stadium, and I was doing the tomahawk chop a lot as a kid. So for me, going back to Tallahassee to play against them, obviously there was a little bit added to it for me. I had that date on my calendar circled as soon as it came out, and I knew that it was going to be a special opportunity when it became a night game, when it became ESPN and all those sorts of things, and it was going to be a nationally televised game. That obviously we wanted to go down there and do our best to win. And we understand it's obviously been a tough place to win for Clemson, especially in recent history, going back to 1989, as you mentioned. But again, like I said, coming off that Boston College loss, we still felt like we had a really solid ball club and can go down there and do some good things against the top 10 team, and to be able to come out of there with a win, as you mentioned. We were thrilled, and as I mentioned prior, losing to Boston College, feeling behind the eight ball, we really felt like we had put ourselves back in the driver's seat in our division, with the win, and then the way we did it, being able to do the 2-minute drill and scoring a touchdown, having James Davis break the long run,
beautiful play,
and then obviously punching it in to win the game. We really felt really good about that. And for me personally, it was a big game for me and my family and all my friends from Florida. Everyone was very thrilled and excited.
Yeah, I never will forget, I think you punched the ball in the end zone at one point, and they panned up to the crowd and then showed your dad celebrating. It was crazy. It was great. It was great.
Yeah, we give him a hard time even now, just because at one point he was in complete tears. At one point it was like cursing our receivers because they had a drop touchdown. It was like a roller coaster of emotions watching my dad in the stands. But I always tell people it was pretty funny when they showed him the first time in the stands. It was just he, my brother, my mom, and that was kind of it. But with texting the way it is now, and even then, people had started to hear that they were showing my dad on TV. So by the fourth quarter, when they showed him, you couldn't. It was all familiar faces around him. There were 25 people around him that had all moved from their seats to try and get on TV by standing next to my dad. So it was just a fun night, and it's something that we have very fond memories of.
And, you talk about texting and everything going back to that point. Now, remind me, did he have on was he listening to the game on like a FM?
Oh, yeah.
Those headphones.
He would listen to the broadcast. He would listen to the broadcast. I mean, there was one point they showed him during that game where he was shushing, I think either my mom or my brother, so he could hear the announcers and what they were saying in their analysis. So he was a very interested father, and I couldn't be more happy to have him.
Well, you guys take that game and you really build a lot of momentum. You roll into a Georgia Tech game at home, night ball game, all purple jerseys. I don't think anybody in Clemson history will forget that one. Game day is in town. You swing the ball out to C.J. Spiller, and would you say that's one of the better plays you've ever seen, his touchdown off of that swing pass?
Yeah, I mean, the truth be told, he was kind of a third or fourth option on that play, and when you get to your third or fourth option, sometimes, I mean, even the best of them, you watch Peyton and Tom Brady on TV, and if you get to your fourth option, generally your feet aren't in a very comfortable position. Your middle clock is starting to run out, and you're expecting some pressure at that point, obviously. So when I dropped back, I mean, it was really, truly a bailout throw. Just, find CJ, see what he can do with it. And, he put a move on two of the leading tacklers in the Atlantic Coast Conference that year and as a career. I mean, Kenny Scott was an All-American, and CJ made him look like a kid in Pop Warner. And, and you talk about, amazing plays, the fact that he was able to stop and start twice like he did, and then ultimately like he was shot out of a cannon. And, I mean, I still to this day don't think there's anybody faster with the football in their hands in pads than C.J. Spiller. I mean, and I've been around. I've seen a lot of guys play. I've seen, the best of them. But C.J. Spiller with the ball, with pads on, is the fastest human being on a football field.
Well, we're talking to, Will Proctor, former Clemson quarterback, and you're listening to Clemson Sports Talk here. This is TigerNet Talk, of course. And B. Bartlett, 819 on Twitter, wants to know if losing Rendrick Taylor really is what hurt, or him going down, I should say, for the second half of the year, had the biggest impact maybe on the way that season finished.
I don't know if Rendrick's injury in particular, obviously, that season we were littered with injuries, both on offense and defense. Our captain and middle linebacker, Anthony Waters, goes out for the year in week 1 with an ACL. Another starting linebacker, Tremaine Billy, broke his leg in the preseason. And that forced a lot of young, inexperienced guys into action. Mike Hamlin had a broken foot, our starting safety. So those are all guys on defense. But then, obviously Rendrick goes out with a broken arm. He's done. That didn't help anything. And then you talk about Thomas Hunter breaking his foot, and then Chancey Stuckey breaking his foot. And, Rendrick is obviously a very talented player and was someone I relied on heavily. But, you talk about whether or not he was kind of a reason for the second half not going the way it did. No, certainly not. I think obviously there were many factors that played into the second half of that year, but I think we had the injury bug kind of as bad as you can get it. 7 or 8 starters to start the year end up out for the year, and that's never good, and obviously forces guys to have to kind of grow up fast, especially younger underclassmen, and as I mentioned, guys with not that much experience.
And when we had Chancey Stuckey on the other day, he talked about what a special team that was and how close you guys were in so many games, a couple of 1-point losses, a 3-point loss to South Carolina, and obviously the only game where you really, just came out and got beat pretty much was against Virginia Tech. But as being the quarterback, you know that when you win games, you're going to get a lot of praise. But unfortunately, I think for you coming in after Charlie Whitehurst at the end of that season, no matter how great things had gone to run out 7-1, you took a lot of heat from the fans being very critical of your play at time. As a young as a young man at the time, looking back on it now, are those things fair when the fans, I think, oftentimes treat the players at the collegiate level like professionals and not realize the fact that you guys are 18, 19, 20 years old?
I think it's fair in some ways, but, I mean, like you said, when things are going good, you get way too much credit, and when things are going bad, you probably get too much of the blame. But, there were games where I felt like I played really well, and maybe we lost, and, I was a ghost. But then there were games where I know I did not play my best or near my best, but yet we won, and everyone thinks you're a hero. And so there was even the opposite, where you just kind of scratch your head going like, wait a second, I didn't even play that great. Everyone thinks I'm, this or that. But, that stuff comes with the territory. And you mentioned coming from behind, coming after Charlie. Charlie had a really big year as a sophomore. The next year didn't go very well for him. And then his senior year was solid. But I got to see ups and downs of his career and see how he was treated by our fans, and people were screaming my name, wanting me to start. I started the game his senior year. There were times where the same thing was happening to him. So I was prepared for that going into my senior year. And obviously I've got a great support system and my family, my father and brother and mom, and also great coaches along the way that prepared me for the ups and downs of a season and a career. And then obviously coming in, and when I was first at Clemson, Willie Simmons was starting quarterback, and he didn't even finish the year that year. So I got to see the way quarterbacks' careers or seasons can go, and I felt prepared for that senior year, and I knew that everything wasn't going to go as planned. And at those critical times, you've got to be able to kind of fight through some adversity and put those things aside and go out and win ball games.
Now, RC Sports Cards in the chat room wants to know, do you keep in touch with Spiller and other past players from that ball club?
Yeah, there's no question. I keep in touch with a lot of guys. CJ and I text every once in a while. Chancey and I are very close, even today. Spent a good bit of time together. I was expecting your guys' call, and I had a missed call from Roman Fry, so I'll have to call him back when I get off with you guys. But I still talk to quite a bit of guys. It's always fun to go back. It truly is a family. You don't really, everyone talks about the Clemson family when you're there, and then until you experience something, and I'll just, obviously it's a sour moment when Gaines Adams passed away. I'll never forget being at his funeral and seeing guys that I would have sworn I'd never see in my life again. Guys I knew for 4 months that were finishing their careers as seniors when I got there. And you really felt like and realized at that moment, in moments like that, that it really truly is a Clemson family, and that there's so many things bigger than the football and bigger than all that you can really rely on this group of men that were your brothers for 5 years, and you realize that it wasn't just 5 years, it's forever. And so that's what makes going back to Clemson so much fun, and it's what makes keeping up with relationships makes it so worthwhile. And guys like Reggie Merriweather and, even beyond the guys we've talked about. But I've really enjoyed continuing those relationships. It's been a lot of fun, and obviously now it's a lot of fun to watch as well.
What's most amazing about your last question or your last answer was when you were saying about the Clemson family. I actually wrote Gaines Adams' name down, and then you brought him up just a few minutes later, and I got goosebumps. I got absolute goosebumps because I was going to ask you what your relationship was like, but there's no need to do that now because you've already spelled it out better than I've ever heard it laid out there about Gaines Adams, and I think that a lot of people who listen to our show are so proud of the way you guys come in here, and you're so well spoken. But then to hear you, be able to tell about your relationship with Gaines Adams and just how important he was, not only to you and your teammates, but to how his legacy carried on. Man, I tell you what, that's impressive, Will.
Yeah, I'd actually he passed away on a Friday night, I believe. And the Saturday prior to that, so 5 days prior to that, my best friend of life had passed away. And it was, 5 days later, my best friend's funeral was the Thursday, the day before Gaines' funeral, or the day before Gaines passed away. But I had just given a eulogy at my best friend's funeral. 2 days later, we had a trip planned where Tim DeBeer, who was a former Clemson player, Chancey Stuckey, the three of us were going to go out to Los Angeles, and I'm a big Orlando Magic fan, so we were going to go watch the Magic play the Lakers out in L.A., and it was interesting because the three of us were all out there together, and obviously all received the news about Gaines together, and I just remember thinking back on that, about how, fortunate the three of us were to have been surrounded by teammates at that time, even though we're years out of college. That at that moment, one of our guys that we came in with, who we knew our whole career, was on my intramural basketball team. We were dorm rooms next door to each other for 3 years. I mean, to be among teammates when hearing terrible, terrible news like that, and it's a horrible tragedy, and someone that was taken off this earth far too soon, who was not only a heck of a football player, as we all know, but just a heck of a young man, someone that I have always been very fond of.
Well, Will, if you have time, I'd love for you to stay on with us here and run through the Clemson 10 after this break. Do you have time to stay around with us?
Yeah, that's fine. Sounds good.
Awesome, man. Well, we're going to roll it out to a break real quick. We'll come back with former Clemson quarterback Will Proctor. Senior season 2006 leads the Tigers out to a 7-1 start, and Tiger Nation was electrified. I remember that was one of the last times people thought, man, we might make a run at the national championship. Losing 4 out of the last 5 games put a little bit of a stain on the season for everybody. But Will joins us to talk about his time at Clemson and go through the Clemson 10 right here on TigerNet Talk. Stay with us, Tiger fans.
Everybody sing Tiger Rag at the top of your lungs, and we'll party like it's 1981.
Do you suffer from a chronic case of the woohoo during football games? Do your Saturdays sound something a bit like this? Well, TigerNet Talk is out to fix that. If we can band together, we can change this reoccurring issue with a simple "Go Tigers, go Tigers, go." You can make a difference. Ban the woohoo. Do yourself a favor. And as always, go Tigers. A winning team requires having great team members. If you're a landowner interested in selling timber or are considering buying or selling land, call the winning team of Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC today. Put the knowledge and skills of professional, licensed foresters and realtors to work for your team. To learn more about the forestry and real estate services offered by Cross Creek Timber, call 864-517-3620 and Cross Creek Realty, LLC at 864-517-3621, or visit www.crosscreektimber.com and easily follow the link to real estate. G-Dog General Dentistry at Oak Grove is located on Highway 1 near the Barnyard Flea Market. Modern, relaxing dentistry with TVs and headphones in every room, nitrous and even oral sedation. Digital diagnostic x-rays for better quality and 85% less radiation exposure. And check out their new Clemson Patient Special. Mention that you heard about G-Dog here on the Clemson Sports Talk programs and receive an extra 5% off all services through football season. If you don't have a regular dentist, go see my dentist, Dr. Rick Jackson at G-Dog. That's General Dentistry at Oak Grove.
There's something about looking and feeling classy that everyone enjoys. Check out Edisto Outdoors, an apparel brand inspired by our southern animals and environment. These shirts feature soft-touch prints that will keep you looking your best in all types of weather. Look for Edisto Outdoors, coming soon to many fine retailers across the state, or visit www.edistooutdoors.com. Technical, comfortable, livable.
Blake Austin of South Carolina Farm Bureau is an insurance agent you can count on to meet all your needs. Home, auto, health, life, you name it, Blake's got you covered, and he can save you on your yearly rates. Call him now for a free quote, 803-259-5008. That's 803-259-5008. Or just go to ClemsonSportsTalk.com and click on the Farm Bureau logo to be connected to Blake. Do like I do and work with the best agent around, and you can tweet that. Clemson Sports Talk fans, let us help you. With rates starting as low as $100 a month, you can advertise with us through July 2013. We are currently seeking additional advertisers and would love to help you spread the word about your business. Email us clemson81@gmail.com for additional information. Sponsors will receive an ad during the show and a link and logo in the weekly show notes on TigerNet and on the front page of ClemsonSportsTalk.com. Take your business to the Clemson fans around the world with us, ClemsonSportsTalk.com.
We turned up, we run down the hill, we so turned up. Rock the rock, hit the the field, no competition. We first.
Lots of people in the chat room with us live. If you're listening to the podcast edition, that's all right. I saw Jonathan Cantrell came in. Jonathan said, hey, this is my first time being here, but this is cool. Then the guys are saying, yeah, it's interactive. So if you listen to the podcast edition, if you catch it when you're riding in your car, guess what? Sunday nights, Wednesday nights, you can join us, talk with former Clemson Tigers. Great questions in the chat room. Lots to get to. We've got Will Proctor, former Clemson quarterback, on the show with us right now. And, Will, we were talking during the break about a big moment during your career, and you go back to the South Carolina and Clemson football game back in 2006. Clemson was up initially 28-14, a game that had some big plays in it. But the fans are bearing down on the crowd, or bearing down on you. The crowd is just roaring for Reggie Merriweather. There's just chance of Reggie wanting him to get the ball as Clemson is approaching the end zone there in Death Valley. Tell us about that moment. What was it like to hear the fans just roaring for one of your teammates?
Yeah, I mean, kind of a theme that year, there were a couple, but, Reggie was the fifth-year senior running back, and we had James Davis, who obviously had been a tremendous player for us up until that point, and the emergence of C.J. Spiller. So we had this phenomenal 1-2 punch, but certainly we didn't, but it felt like at times some of the fans kind of not forgot about Reggie, but just kind of he was an afterthought to, quote, thunder and lightning. But within our locker room, we knew how talented a player Reggie was and how reliable he was, how powerful he was, how clutch he had been throughout his entire career. I mean, what a great pass blocker he was, never missed an assignment, just the type of guy that you would want, coaching your kids, much less playing. I mean, just unbelievable. And so, being from North Augusta, South Carolina, and, a kind of common thing that kept happening to us that year was we would start drives within our own 5-yard line, which if you asked our sports information director, Tim Beret, would tell you that we quintupled the amount of times we started within our own 5 that year. It was painful. But once again, we had started a drive on our own 6 or 5 or 4 or something like that. And we literally went right down the field, and it was all our offensive line and Reggie Merriweather. And I'll never forget, hearing his name chanted. Rarely when you're on the field do you hear the crowd. I can think of 2 instances in my entire career as an athlete, at every level that I've ever been able to hear the crowd, one of which was Georgia Tech, our senior year, where we converted our first third down of the game, and I hit Tyler Grisham on a curl route, and the place went, the roof blew off, figuratively. And I remember thinking to myself, whoa, that was loud. And, but Reggie, when they were chanting his name, I'll never forget hearing it, but then calling the play at the line of scrimmage, we ran a no-huddle offense, and I turned around I don't know why, I never really did, but I just turned around to take a look at Reggie, and I saw a look in his eyes that I had never seen in a human being in my life. Just this look of, one of those things where you'll turn around to go, hey, man, you're getting it, and the look tells you everything you need to know. Okay, make sure he gets it. So he was just a force to be reckoned with, and, if we had to draw it up again, I'm sure we can, kind of leave him in the game and continue to hand it to him because he wasn't going to be stopped on that drive. I mean, it was 8-9 yards every time we touched the ball, and we didn't really need that many there at the end to score a touchdown. So, he's obviously that's a great moment and something I'll never forget.
Yeah, that was just an electric atmosphere at that point in time in Death Valley. And Will, we want to run you through real quick the Clemson 10. Look, we've had wide receivers, we've had running backs, we've had defensive linemen come through. We've never had a quarterback, so I'm expecting a lot out of you because you're supposed to have complete control over the playbook. So for these 10 questions, you're supposed to knock these out of the park.
No problem.
All right, Will Proctor here on the Clemson 10. Will, first off, what does Clemson mean to you?
Clemson, to me, it may be one of the most unique and special places, there is in this world. I grew up a lot at Clemson. I became a man there. It seasoned me in many ways and prepared me for so much beyond just football, and for that I'm very grateful. So Clemson means an awful lot to me.
Guess what? My wife just corrected me. My wife says, you had Woody Dantzler on. That's right. I did have Woody Dantzler on. Sorry, Woody. How can I forget Woody? Woody was on the show recently. How about this? Describe the first time you ran down the hill on a game day.
First time I ran down the hill, I think kind of my opinion on the hill is if that doesn't fire you up and get you ready to play a game, then I don't know what will. I think I found out that day that it is truly the most exciting 25 seconds in college football, if not all of sports. I got to do that on game day 33 times, and each one is very, very special to me, not only the first, but especially the last. So, it's a very unique thing and something that if you haven't seen in person, which I'm sure many of the people listening have all seen it in person, but if you haven't seen it in person, it's something that you need to go and see.
Who's had the biggest influence on your life?
My father, without question. Very fortunate to have the dad that I have, the guy that supported me from day one as a child, who's always encouraged me to follow my dreams and to has helped me along the way in more ways than I could ever repay or could ever thank him. Was the guy that was driving me from camp to camp throughout the recruiting process and helped me put together highlight tapes and setting up tailgates at games and, never missed a game, not only in high school but in college or professionally. When my brother was playing college football at Davidson on Saturdays and I was playing back in Winter Park on Friday nights, he would go to my game and then go to my brother's game the next day. He's just that kind of dad that really wanted to be involved in our lives, but in the right way, was never a little league dad, as I like to call it, or a helicopter dad that's going to be hovering around, but just wanted to be a part of it and was so proud of not only me but my brother, and we're both very fortunate to have the father that we have.
What's your favorite spot on campus? If you could snap your fingers right now at Clemson, where would you be?
Two places. I think the locker room, just because that's a sacred place and a place I have a lot of, if you ask a fraternity guy at this point in his life where he'd go back to, I'm sure he'd say his frat house. But I'd say the locker room or potentially, you may second this, but Bowman Field on that first warm day of the spring, that first warm day when everybody's out there. So that was always a place I like to be.
And in the South, that might happen in March, so that's always a good thing too.
Exactly.
Exactly. How about your greatest moment during your time at Clemson?
My greatest moment during my time, I'm sure you want me to say something on the field or in football, but my greatest moment, we still watch that Florida State game. We have the ESPN copy, and our family, we put it on at Christmas or with our extended family. As I mentioned earlier, just about kind of an overall meaning for me for that game and being from Florida and how important that was, not only for me personally, but for our team at that point during the year, and how we kind of had to fight our guts out there in the fourth quarter to come back and all of that. That probably was my kind of favorite memory looking back.
Your toughest moment?
Our toughest moment, obviously, a lot of people like to point to that Virginia Tech game as kind of a turning point in our year. But for me, while that was a tough game and that was a tough night for many of us, not only for me personally, but our offense in general, and then obviously our defense in general, and everybody kind of had an off night. But, even at that point, you're still 7-2. You're still in a position to you've got a couple conference games left. You can still end up in the ACC championship game in the Orange Bowl and in the BCS. But for me, that next week after Virginia Tech, losing to Maryland at home, settling for 4 field goals, not getting in the end zone, for me that was tough because losses are going to happen. You want to obviously, if we would end that year 10-2, people would talk about that Virginia Tech game like it was no big deal. But losing to Maryland was extremely difficult just because we had done a lot of good things that whole game. Statistically, just getting in the red zone, we were all of a sudden inept for some reason, and that was probably as difficult a moment as any.
Now, we all took some tough courses at Clemson. What was your most difficult class?
Oh man, I don't know. That's tough. maybe one of my law classes or something, or maybe one of my last finance classes. I'm not sure. I enjoyed a lot of my classes at Clemson. I was fortunate to have some great teachers that, if it was a difficult class, would help make it easier just by the way they taught. So I was fortunate to end up with great professors.
The best stadium to play in on the road?
I already have referenced my favorite moment, which was in Tallahassee, but I know that's probably a popular answer. But Kyle Field at Texas A&M is as neat an environment as you'll find in college football. I would put it up there with our home stadium, with Florida, with LSU, with gosh, you name it. There's some of the top spots out there, but Kyle Field in College Station is probably an underrated place, and we went there in 04, I believe, or 05 rather, and we lost. I didn't actually play in the game, but it was a neat experience, 12th man, and everything. And it's also the flattest field I've ever seen, so which was kind of strange.
One thing most people don't know about Will Proctor.
Oh, man. I guess after playing football in Canada and specifically Montreal, I picked up a lot of French, which is probably something nobody really knows. I'm actually going to Paris in a couple of weeks with my wife, so I'm hoping to put some of that French to use and impress her. So that's my game plan with that.
And finally, Will, appreciate you being here. In 10 years, what do you hope Clemson fans still remember about Will Proctor?
In 10 years, well, I hope they're talking about one or two national championships that we've won between tonight and then. But, I don't know. I mean, when you go to a school, you always hope that you leave the program better than when you found it. And, we obviously worked very hard to not only live our dreams, but to provide a party for 7 home Saturdays a year, and to put on a great show for our fans, and hopefully the school or not even the school, hopefully the program, the football program, was in a better position when we left it. We certainly all think it is now, and I think that has a lot to do with Dabo Swinney, who's just done a tremendous job. But hopefully our class of guys that came in, the 2002 recruiting class, hopefully we made an impact on the school and an impact on the program that has helped propel us hopefully to this point, and hopefully these guys that are there now will continue to propel us even further, and we're certainly on track with the last couple of years that have just been tremendous and so much fun to watch and be a part of.
Will Proctor, ladies and gentlemen. Will, thank you very much for coming on TigerNet Talk.
All right, I appreciate it, Lawton. You guys have a good night. Enjoyed it.
All right, Will Proctor, former Clemson quarterback, here on TigerNet Talk, presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC. Stay with us. Final segment of the show coming up. We'll talk a little bit about Will, a little Clemson Tiger basketball, and Clemson Tiger baseball before we get you out of here. We're close to the hour, but don't worry. We'll only go over a few minutes. Stay with us, though. We'll be right back with more TigerNet Talk.
In my head, if I pointed it just
We scoop the boot, dutycalls.com. When nobody else will do it, dutycalls.com. To make that dog poop go away, call or click for a free quote today.
When nature calls, we answer. To get a free quote for dog poop removal, go to dutycalls.com now.
DOODYCALLS. Dutycalls.com.
In the Midlands area, dial 1-800-DUTY-CALLS. They're number 1 and number 2. Blake Austin of South Carolina Farm Bureau is an insurance agent you can count on to meet all your needs. Home, auto, health, life, you name it, Blake's got you covered, and he can save you on your yearly rates. Call him now for a free quote, 803-259-5008. That's 803-259-5008. Or just go to ClemsonSportsTalk.com and click on the Farm Bureau logo to be connected to Blake. Do like I do and work with the best agent around, and you can tweet that. Hey there, Tiger fans. When you take yourself out to the ball game, make sure that you're staying at the Clemson University Conference Center and Inn. That's right, it's the closest hotel to Doug Kingsmore Stadium. Lakeside accommodations, complimentary continental breakfast bar with waffles, the Seasons by the Lake restaurant, Joe's Place Bar, and the Walker Golf Course are all waiting for you right around the corner from Doug Kingsmore Stadium. For reservations, contact General Manager Sharon Franks at sharonf@clemson.edu or call 1-888-654-9020 and ask to speak to Sharon. Buy yourself some peanuts and Cracker Jacks, but make sure that you stay at the Clemson University Conference Center and Inn. A winning team requires having great team members. If you're a landowner interested in selling timber or are considering buying or selling land, call the winning team of Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC today. Put the knowledge and skills of professional licensed foresters and realtors to work for your team. To learn more about services offered by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC, visit www.crosscreektimber.com and easily follow the link to real estate or reach them by phone 864-517-3620 or 864-517-3621.
This is Clemson Tom, and you're listening to Clemson Sports Talk. So sit down and have you a cold one and listen to a true American.
I like driving down Clemson Boulevard.
TigerNet Talk presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty. I'm your host, Lawton Swan. Thank you for being here. We're closing in, as I said, on that hour. Will Proctor, former Clemson quarterback, was with us. He was great as always. As always, everybody that we have coming in here on the show, I tell you what, they just impress me. They really do. And I see people in the chat room talking about it, and you probably get tired of me saying it, but what is amazing, and I don't just hunt down these guys who are so well-spoken, this, that, and the other. I mean, I just get the guys that we can get, line them up, go out and bring them in, and every time. And the thing that people are noting in the chat room, and I think it's important, Will was constantly talking about his teammates and the things what they did to help him out. I think that tells you a lot about him as a quarterback, and he took a lot of heat. He took a lot of grief. That was the first thing initially I thought about when I started to really think about having him on the show, is how much heat he took as a young adult at the quarterback position. And you got to know, as the quarterback, you're going to get praise when you win. You're going to take a lot of heat if you lose. I thought he gave a very appropriate answer to that question, that it's fair at times, and in other ways it's not. But the funniest thing I thought he said was on that swing pass out to C.J. Spiller, he said, and I quote, "I'm just going to find C.J. and see what he can do with it." That was, if I had a playbook and I had C.J. Spiller on my team, that would probably be play number one. Yeah, guys, where are we going to run this play? I think we're just going to try and find C.J. and see what he can do with it. Because that'll put the ball in the end zone more times than not. I want to talk about one thing, though, real quick, if you'll give me a minute, just to stay away from Clemson Tiger baseball, and to some degree, I guess this will kind of tie in Clemson Tiger football. But you've probably heard all this information about Jim Merrill, the representative out of Berkeley, and the House Ways and Means Committee trying to ban Clemson from using the South Carolina plane, the state's plane, to fly to go to see recruits, because basically Merrill says that I don't think that anyone in the state feels like they need to be spending tax dollars and time in the state plane to go recruit for athletic programs.
Well, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard of.
You couldn't have said it any better, Fred Sanford. Clemson's paying you to use this plane. If Clemson's not using it, if it's sitting in a hangar, it's just wasting away. If you have a problem, Mr. Merrill or anybody else who voted for Clemson and I guess the use of any college program to not be able to use this plane, if you have a problem with the price that they're paying, then up the price. Fair market. Just up the price. And they're pointing out, RCSportscards.com is pointing out in the chat room, he's a Gamecock graduate. Yeah, and you would think that he would understand that plane sitting is wasting more taxpayer dollars than if Clemson is actually flying it and reimbursing them and paying. You can put in all the depreciation and everything. I should have asked Will about this, because basically doing the job that he does, he's probably all kind of, he could probably explain that a lot better than I can. But really, Is it better to have that plane sitting on the ground? And then I started to think, too, as I kind of read through this, what purpose does our state have a plane for? Governor Haley flew in it. She ended up having to pay like $10,000 back for some flights that she took, which if they were personal, she should have to pay for it. Just like if Clemson borrows it, they should have to pay for it. Just like if you borrowed it, if you had the right to or the option to. If you pay what it cost, what's the big deal? Are the taxpayers of South Carolina better off? Now, look, this is another financial thing I don't understand. Are the taxpayers in South Carolina better off if Clemson rents an airplane from somebody else, a private firm, than the state? In my mind, I feel like we're doing better for the state by using their plane. Hey, I mean, I'm not a financial guru by any means, but that's my thoughts. So I just wanted to let Jim Merrill, and if you are down in Berkeley County and you have a chance to vote against him, I think I would. And he's obviously not the only person, as I mentioned, the House Ways and Means Committee, who voted for this proposal. And I guess it's going to go to the House. I don't know how everything works as far as that goes. Maybe the Senate. Who knows? But it just seems like it's better than having that plane sit covered on a tarmac or wherever you sit a plane. I'm not wealthy enough yet to have a plane. The Clemson Tigers and the Maryland Terrapins get together this weekend, Saturday at noon, on the road at Maryland. Boy, is that environment, that's one of the few environments in college basketball where they have to use the 10-second delay at the games because of the fans. And I believe it's gotten worse since Maryland's decided to leave the Atlantic Coast Conference. They did beat Duke the other day, but I bet you there were 15 times when they panned the crowd that ESPN had to silence what was being said because of all the language that the Maryland fans were spitting there. Maryland fans in basketball could probably be fairly compared to Philadelphia Eagle fans in football. I think it's a very fair comparison there. They did beat Duke, though. Duke was ranked number 2 in the country. Clemson, of course, takes Miami down to the wire and gets beaten. I hate it for this team and these young guys that they didn't find a way to get that win. When I look back on that game, we talked about it on Clemson Hotline on Sunday night. The thing that was most disappointing is that those young guys didn't get that monumental win this season yet. Maybe they'll find a way to get one that's big and lasting, but that's the kind of confidence builder that you could use down the road to say, hey, you know what? Miami was a top 5 team. And if Miami is a top 5 team in basketball, I think that says a lot about where college basketball is right now. But at least you could compete with them. At least you could beat them. And that's something that you could carry on. And I just wonder, this is a team that we've worried about all season, maybe being a little bit fragmented mentally from the way things have gone, and now losing 5 games in conference play by 5 points or less. I mean, that concerns me. I mean, Jordan Roper has continued to show that he's got the utmost confidence in himself. If that kid doesn't start the rest of the season, it's a disappointing sign of this of where this program is in my mind. I think he needs to start every game the rest of the way we've seen him. As I mentioned on Clemson Hotline, if you can't believe that Brad Bradell can get the job done, when you look at what Roper's turned into, what KJ McDaniels is, and I know McDaniels had a bad game against against Miami, and what Devin Coleman appeared to be last season, I think you got a nice core going forward. But losing those games by such a thin margin, you lose by 5 to Florida State, you lose by 3 to Florida State, 4 to NC State, 1 to NC State, and 2 to Miami. Boston College, surprisingly, has lost 6 games in conference play by 5 points or less. A Boston College team that when Clemson lost to them, you said, oh, and I said, oh, how does that happen? They've been in a lot of games too, but Clemson's in these games because they're scrappy on defense, they hustle, they don't shoot good at all, but they fight and they fight and they fight, and if they could make their free throws, it could be all the difference in the world. It's not, look, we can say it's a talent gap right now, but I don't believe that. I think we're not the most talented team, but I think we've made up for the talent gap with our defense. Where we've really let ourselves down is at the free throw line 9 times out of 10, and you don't have to have a whole lot of talent to be a very good free throw shooter. That's the thing. You have to have talent to break a guy down off the dribble and get to the hoop. You have to have talent to knock down jumpers with guys running out at you, making a pump fake, dribble drive, penetration, whatever you want to do. A free throw, the right person, you can find some computer geek, and I'm not killing you computer geeks out there, because without you guys, my operating system would be a mess probably. But you can find a computer geek, if you gave him enough practice, could probably knock down 80, 90%. You don't have to be the most athletic person to get that muscle memory and repetition down. That was mentioned on Sunday. And that's what's a little bit frustrating for me about it right now. But you get a chance at Maryland. They're 18-8, 6-7 in conference play. They do have one of the best big men in the league, though. That concerns me a little bit. Alex Lynn, 7'1". He's an NBA prospect. He's their leading scorer, 12.4 points per game, and averages 8 rebounds a game. It'll be a tall task, literally, for Devin Booker in the paint, and I guess Milton Jennings. That's probably the biggest concern you have. How much Landry Noko will you see? Not the most skilled guy, but at least somebody who's going to put a little bit more height on Alex Lynn. That'll be the Clemson's biggest difficulty in my mind. And finally, Clemson Tiger baseball versus Wright State this weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday set. Friday at 4, Saturday at 2, Sunday at 1. You know, it's the second series of the season, and this coming week, the Tigers do kick off their first midweek game Tuesday against Winthrop. I believe that game's at 4 o'clock right now. I don't think there's any scheduling changes that are going to be made to that, so I believe that one will be 4 o'clock on Tuesday, and that, of course, will begin really when baseball season picks up once you start those midweek games. And then, if my memory serves me correctly, it's the Gamecocks and the Tigers. So, Tiger baseball pushing forward. Clemson Tiger basketball, 5 games remaining in the season, I believe. At least in the regular season. They've got Maryland, as I mentioned, noon this Saturday, and then NC State on the 28th at 7. North Carolina on the 28th at 7 o'clock. So we'll talk about that and much more right here on TigerNet Talk, presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty next week, as that's a Thursday night game against North Carolina. So a whole lot to get to then. I hope you'll be here with us 9 o'clock. Sunday nights at 9 for Clemson Hotline. Wednesday nights at 9 for TigerNet Talk. Thanks to the chat room. You guys were amazing tonight. I appreciate you being here. And as always, y'all take care now. And go Tigers!